All right, and welcome to Fast Break Breakfast NBA podcast. My name is Keith, here alone for a solo interview episode. We're in the full, deep off season. The episodes will still be coming out at a regular clip, but who knows what we will be talking about. The full episodes might get weird. We'll see what's going to happen. Today's episode is with Ben Taylor of Thinking Basketball. We talk a lot about buffets, also about his Thinking Basketball site. We talk about the Rockets a good deal, James Harden, and how that fit is going to be with him and Westbrook. So hopefully it'll be very enjoyable for you guys. NBA news, there's really nothing else going on. The only things I found out interesting today were very Grizzlies related. One, Josh Jackson has not been given a jersey number still, despite the fact that everyone else on the Grizzlies who's been acquired this summer has gotten a jersey number. The three players without jersey numbers from the Grizzlies that are on the official roster are Andre Iguodala, Dwight Howard, and Josh Jackson. So if you were in the Grizzlies might waive Josh Jackson, seems possible, or that maybe he won't even be on the team at all. So I thought that was interesting. Chris Harrington with the Daily Memphian pointed that out for me. And also Dylan Brooks and Brandon Clark were not on the updated list of the Team Canada basketball roster. Apparently Brooks is still recovering from his toe injury that ended his season last year. So Dylan Brooks is at Team Canada's training camp, but he's not going to play in the World Cup. And Brandon Clark is not going to play, which, I don't know, seems kind of disappointing, but maybe they figured they had other options for big men for Team Canada. So Dylan Brooks and Brandon Clark are not going to be a part of the FIBA World Cup this summer. Anyway, if you want to support our show, patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. I've been dropping some bonus Grizzlies episodes on there, the Grits and Grind. And by the way, John Burr in Florida went to a breakfast establishment that was called Grits and Grind. Incredible. It seems like it has to be a Grizzlies fan or person because they had a bear on their logo. Also, incredibly, I think John Burr didn't ask anyone or pursue the matter to figure out what was going on there. But we have that on our Patreon feed. Also, there's the Slack chat for people $3 and up that goes around the clock. And we have a ground chuck coming out this week. So make sure you're part of that $5 and up tier to get those bonus episodes. Eventually, any Grizzlies Grits and Grind episodes will be going to that $5 and up tier as well. So if you want to support our show, you can do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. All right, now let's talk with Ben. My guest today is the creator of the successful Thinking Basketball YouTube channel and podcast, and is a first-time guest on Fast Break Breakfast, Ben Taylor. Ben, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing very well. If you don't know, we start off talking about breakfast. Did you have a breakfast today that you can share with us?
It is only 10 o'clock out here in the Pacific, and
right.
I cannot eat that early.
Oh,
I actually like to eat breakfast at the end of the day.
Oh, okay.
I do it backwards.
That's fine.
Yeah. You ever do that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I like eggs and things of this nature in the evening.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very nostalgic to me. I quite enjoy it.
I do like it. One of our co-hosts, John, he likes to besmirch the breakfast for dinner. I don't know. That's some weird pent-up thing that he has. I don't know. It's a childhood damage. I think it's delightful. It's fun. I mean, you got your toasts, your pancakes.
You ever had pancakes at night?
Yeah. It's great.
That's liberating.
You can put a protein on there. Maybe protein for a breakfast pancakes, not as accepted, although it should be. But no, I love it. Oh, this is good. So let's talk about the night stuff, because the main reason I wanted to have you on, yes, you have good basketball thoughts. You make some good basketball content. But when you were on Dunked On, you were music to my ears of giving me some buffet takes. I love buffet takes. I wanted to know, so apparently you guys had a big meetup at the Caesars Palace buffet. What is your buffet strategy? And I think you were complaining perhaps you didn't execute it properly. Like you had a game plan, but then when you got in the heat of the game, it didn't work out the way you hoped.
we had time issues with that buffet. It was, you call it a meetup. I call it an all-you-can-eat competition.
Yeah.
And now, look, I am not great at the math sometime, but if the buffet closes at like 10:30 and you get there at 9:30, how much buffeting are you having?
That's not good. No, that's a different game entirely.
Yeah. So especially for me, I hadn't really been to I guess I've a couple years ago, not like 20 years ago, but I used to pick up breakfast sometimes when I would eat it earlier in the day. I used to pick up breakfast at like a store would have the little breakfast items out in the buffet, or if you're at a hotel, the same kind of thing. I like one of those, but that's not real buffet game to me. No. I had to go back into the playbook and figure out what on earth you do at a buffet. Do you start with your do you get your proteins in early? Like, how am I doing this? So I had a whole game plan, and it was like Mike Tyson. Everyone has a game plan until they're late.
Yeah.
It all went up in flames.
Well, so what was your game plan? Did you decide on proteins early, or what was your game plan if you had maybe a more luxurious or a longer time to mill about?
My general game plan, I do very well with starchy, carbs, bready kind of foods and desserts later.
Yeah.
I can pile, like, once I kind of get full, I can just start gorging on those. But if you do them early, they take up too much space in the stomach and things like that. So my general game plan was save that stuff for later, try to get more of my protein stuff early, and I wanted to go around and find items that I would like to go back to. Thinking I would have a full plate, I would go back and start to hit items that I like, maybe try a few more things. And then when you get into that marathon phase of your buffet eating, where you're putting yourself into a food coma and loosening the belt, then I would hit my stride and say, like, boy, I gotta have another one of those salmon burgers. I have no
yeah.
Which actually happened. The salmon burger there was quite delicious. But then I was going to go from there into my binge carb eating, and then really hit my final sprint for the home stretch for dessert. I'm a grazer, man. I can't do that in like an hour and a half. I needed like a good 3 to 4 hours in there.
I did on Dunked On. I'm pretty sure Nate gave you some incorrect information. I think he was saying as long as you're still eating, you can stay at a buffet as long as you want. And that's not true. They will.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
I thought they
will come around and be like, "Sir, you need to leave."
You had this happen first.
I want to say it's like a 90-minute or 2 hour where they were, because like they put your receipt on the table at most of them, and I think they will at some point be like, because a lot of those things, you can order like a bottomless beer or mimosa or something. They will kick you out. You can't sit there all day. Have you ever had? I know you say you're not much of a breakfast eater. I used to, when I went to NBA Summer League, part of like the hotel package I got with my credit card was I would get a breakfast buffet comp. So I would like time it to be as hungry as possible, and I would like start at 10:30 a.m. and try to pound for a solid 90 minutes before going to the gym. And those are my calories for the day. I tried to make it through the whole, sitting in Thomas and Mack for 10, 12 hours with that breakfast. So have you ever had any of the breakfast buffets in Vegas?
I don't think so. I don't remember, honestly. I want to say no. You know what I realized this last night.
Yeah.
It's almost like so Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies. I used to watch it all the time growing up. And only as an adult one day did I wake up and realize they live in Hill Valley. Yeah. That doesn't make sense. It's an oxymoron.
Right.
So I had been seeing this thing in front of my face forever. So last night I realized fast break fast.
Yeah.
It just had been sitting under my nose all this time.
Yeah, most people say breakfast, but keep going.
No, I'm just saying.
The word.
Now I get it. Yeah.
It got you?
No, it got me. It's just sitting there. Fast break fast.
Hill Valley is a joke. Our name, Fast Break Breakfast, it's a palindrome, but it's not. It's how we describe
exactly.
it.
What do you call it? A mirror?
We don't call it anything. The best one of these is Brent Berry's Twitter handle is Berry A3, and I never understood it was like a homonym for Barry a 3 until I was speaking with him, and I was like, oh, Barry a 3, I get it. Like I'd never said it out loud. You
just blew my mind.
Yeah. So there's another one. I don't know. There are probably many more wonders hiding in plain sight like this, but I don't know what they are. Oh, I was going to say the breakfast buffet. One of my things with that is, it's the key is not getting like the pancakes first. You have to add pancakes to the dessert category.
Right.
Like I will start with almost all. Like I will get a custom made omelet. I will go get maybe some yogurts, but just a little bit. A taste of you have prime beef at 9 a.m. Yeah, I'll take that. You cut them off.
It's a rule. If you're at a breakfast buffet, you have to tell the omelet guy to make an omelet.
Oh yeah. Well, also, and if there's a carving station, you have to hit it. There's a lot. I mean, I don't know if anyone has codified the Vegas buffet rules, but yeah, there's a lot. There's even like when there's pizza. I feel like pizza's a trap because a lot of places have a pizza. You're like, you know what? I don't need the pizza here. But is the Caesars? Is the Caesars buffet? I've never been. Is it in your upper echelon?
It's good. It's good.
It is good. Okay.
The idea is essentially gourmet food for 6,000 people.
Okay.
And they do it well. It's impressive. There's, it's not the greatest meal. It's not a 3-star Michelin meal, but it is, it's quite solid. Keith, what is the standard protocol for breakfast time on your pod? Do we give it 10 minutes? Like, what do the listeners expect when they tune in? Are they tuning in for the food talk? We can go the whole half hour on food talk if you want.
I exclusively want to talk about Vegas buffets with you. I don't know if that was in a rundown of sorts. It depends on the interview episodes. It can be anywhere from 10 to 3 minutes. We're at 8 minutes. That's high. But I wanted, this is what I want. Because we're going to do less than a half an hour. But again, I felt like this is the content people want. It is August. There is no NBA news. So this is fine with me. I just don't want to rush anything. I don't want to push into the basketball stuff.
I couldn't pick a basketball out of a sporting ball lineup right now. So we're so deep into the off season. But I'm here for the food, man. Let's do it.
Well, since we just did that, and I felt like you kind of broke the flow, let's go to basketball.
All right, fine.
It's all right. So you do the Thinking Basketball YouTube channel and podcast. Can you give us or me even what's the general overview of what the angle of that content is?
Boy, I would say the general overview is pushing back against this dichotomy that people are either film people or they're stats people. Mm-hmm. And it's really trying to look at the X's and O's of basketball, the causality of what's going on down on the court, things that are happening off the ball, and study those, but also in the lens of how can we measure all this stuff? Like, what do all these measurements mean? What do all these stats mean? What are the contexts that they all exist in? And that's the general spirit of the podcast, both the podcast and the YouTube channel. They both take the title of my book, which I published a few years ago, called Thinking Basketball. And I guess that started, to the spirit of your question, I guess, is better answered by saying when I wrote that book, it was really about how we perceive the game, fundamental things that are happening that are easy for us to miss, the disconnect between stats and the eye test and things like that. So a lot of my work over the years has been about how we weave narratives, fundamental biases, and there's a little of that in the channel as well. But when you bubble it up to sort of this hardcore NBA content in 2020 now, it's a lot of looking at film, looking at data, how do they fit together, and how can you use all that stuff to enjoy your understanding of what the heck's going on in the court when you're watching the game.
I also think I've seen you on Twitter several times. You rank things, but you're always like, it's not a rank. It's not a specific number. There's always some leeway. There's give or take. It's just like, this is the ballpark of where we put these people.
Any serious ranking I do is going to end up usually being more about the range and more about what I see as reasonable takeaways. I think a lot of that is not just it's hard to pinpoint some of this stuff, and there's fluidity and different dynamics to take into account. But a lot of that for me is just people get so psychologically married to a number. Yeah. They become obsessed with a number. Is this player a top 10 player of all time? Like, if you think he's 11th or 10th, 11th is a disservice, but 10th, you're beautiful.
Yeah. One of the terms that you use a lot that I really enjoy is you talk about scaling or scalability, how a person's, it can be a stats, how do they translate? And so explain more. My comprehension of what you mean in that is like Tyreek Evans could score 20 points per game on the 2016 Grizzlies, but that doesn't scale necessarily. If you move him to a playoff team, he's probably not doing that. So is that
right? Yeah, and it's easy to get the superficial idea of that just from like a points per game number, but the spirit of it is even deeper. It's about impact, because there are a lot of players who can have a particular impact taking, say, a 25-win team to a playoff team, 42 wins or something, and that's really impressive. But if the player does that by, say, needing to play one way, demanding the basketball, only running pick and roll with certain people, and so on and so forth, when you get to higher and higher levels of teams, it's already more likely that, for instance, they have players that can do that. They have scorers that can do that. So can you go to a 45-win team and make them a 62-win team? That is drastically different than going from a 25-win team and making them a 42-win team. And typically this is an offensive thing. And it's an offensive thing because there's only one ball in basketball, which to me is one of the most fascinating and interesting parts of the sport, is that, and we'll see this, the big test right now this year is Houston. It's like, what does it mean when you take two guys who can floor raise a team? They can keep them from being poor just by running an offense through them. But that doesn't guarantee when you put them together, you're going to get a great offense.
Yeah, and we see this a lot of times throughout NBA history when you combine, you make a super team, and then it takes a while for it all to kind of mesh, or you see the team maybe not being as good as you might have imagined the sum of its parts. Another example that I think about this is with my favorite team, the Grizzlies, like Jonas Valanciunas. Jonas Valanciunas can definitely, I think, get the Grizzlies from like 20 wins to 30 wins. And I think there's value in that when you're a bad team. Like, let's not get hammered all the time. Jonas can give us 20-10 or 18-10 or something on a bad team. But we saw on the Raptors, like, he was just part of a platoon of like a center rotation. So he's not really, I don't know. Do you think Valanciunas has scalability higher, or is that example accurate?
Yeah, I think exactly. Well, it's semi-accurate in the sense that I don't think he's going to pop as like a huge impact game changer.
Right.
Even though, to your point, I think he could put up numbers, and, you know, the difference between him and the lineup might be 22 wins and 30 wins or something like that. Yeah. But, you know, I don't think anyone's viewing him as a big star, and we already have some sample, even though he's still growing as a player, of when you are on a richer, deeper team in Toronto, you need the breadth of skill to show. Like, how's your pick and roll defense as a big? How's your backline rotations? Are you passing and synergizing with off-ball players better on offense? Whereas in Memphis, he's going to be one of the key cogs to put up 18, 20 points. So he's going to be the Dino Raja of the Memphis Grizzlies this year. But to your point, that's actually where I started to come up with this idea, is looking at NBA history and going deeper and deeper and deeper back in time. And you get a lot of people think like the super team era began with the Heatles in 2011. The original OG super team was the 1969 Lakers, who had Elgin Baylor and Jerry West. And Wilt Chamberlain said, I want to go join the Lakers. And so you take Wilt Chamberlain, who was coming off, I think off the top of my head, 3 straight MVP seasons, and joining Jerry West and Elgin Baylor. And it was like, all right, this should be the Beatles of basketball. And the sum was, or the total was way less than the sum of the parts. And so you start unpacking these things and looking at why. And, we see it happen over and over and over again in history. And it really has to do with, are your skills scalable? In other words, can you add value or sustain the value you had on an average team when you put better teammates around you?
So you mentioned the Houston Rockets, which are going to be an interesting example of adding Westbrook and Harden together. What is your opinion right now in the midst of the offseason on how that is going to work in this coming season?
Man, when I saw the trade go through, my first thought was Houston's floor got lower, like more bad stuff could happen possibly with this. But I think they also potentially raised their ceiling. And it's actually harder for me to see that happening, but I do think there is the possibility of Westbrook being able to devote more attention to defense, which will be a good thing. He will add a transition pace, change of pace element possibly to the team. All these things are possibilities.
Yeah.
Let me answer the question this way first, Keith.
Give me a range of outcomes. Okay. No, I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, no, there's your range of outcomes, but I think I want to take a step back.
Uh-huh.
The larger issue that I'm noticing with massive roster turnover, or when you have new key pieces coming into the chemistry experiment, is we don't know as an outside public what the coaching staff's going to do. We always look at the players, right? We always say, like, is a player going to be able to subjugate or move off ball more or spot up more, improve his outside shoot, whatever. But a lot of times it's not just about the players. It's about the coaching scheme, what they can get the players to buy into, but what they want to emphasize. I think of Kevin Garnett going to Boston, which is a great example of a scalable, diverse player, because what really popped when he went there was passing and defense. But if they don't have Tibbs, if they don't have a coaching staff, they don't have Doc Rivers that's trying to get buy-in on defense and moving the ball and these kinds of tenets, that could have looked really, really different. And I actually, going back through and trying to study like the crazy experiments of new players joining up in history, half the time I feel like, well, boy, the coaching staff went one way, and half the time the coaching staff went the other way. And as standing on the outside, that's just always a huge unknown. And I kind of feel that way about what's going to happen in Houston.
Mm-hmm. Do you consider them to be near the top or in the conversation of these best teams, though? Like, do you think they're going to be able to keep pace with if it's the Lakers or the Clippers or the Jazz, Nuggets? Like, do you think they're going to have either enough depth or the combination of them sharing the ball, these two ball-heavy guys, like, are they going to be in that elite conversation in your mind right now, or maybe a tier below?
Yeah, they somewhere in there, maybe a tier below, maybe in an in-between tier. I mean, if just forget Westbrook for a second, Harden by himself is going to give you a really good regular season offense.
Yeah.
And so, it gets really interesting when you have all these good teams packed together in a conference, and parity starts to come into play. And we saw it last year, and I think it may be even more compressed this year. But, when you start to get to like 54, 55, 56 wins at the top of the conference, getting 50 wins becomes a very difficult task. Well, if Harden can still keep them elevated as an offense by himself and the defense treads water, they should be right there regular season wise. Now, that's assuming things don't fall off the rails or there's no injuries or what have you. So from that perspective, I do see them in that conversation. But looking ahead, I don't really have a good answer yet for, do they have the playoff horses, and does everything fit together in terms of offense and defense in the playoffs to really justify them, at least in my mind, in that like top tier?
Your most recent podcast episode, you talk about the best 10 playmakers in NBA history. And in that conversation, I'm not going to reveal the 10. Interested listeners, just go check out his podcast to get the answer of your top 10. But in that conversation, you said some stuff about James Harden, which I'm not an unbiased observer or arbiter of the Rockets. I dislike the Rockets. I enjoy cheering against James Harden. And in there, you talk about how there is such a dip between James Harden's regular season and postseason numbers. You have this playmaking score, which I don't know what it is. It's one of your, I guess.
It's just voodoo. It's just okay. I made it up.
Well, you have your own stats that you make up that are for your for the Patreon and free thing. I'm all about that. We have our own stats here at Fast Break Breakfast. I mean,
buffet times, number of eggs consumed.
No, we have we have the Aminu, which is a dribble off leg or foot. No, I'm sorry, the Adolf, which is the dribble off leg or foot. It was originally the Aminu dribbles off leg or foot. So that's how we count some turnovers separately as the Adolf. We also have the Ishvorp, which is our International Stackhouse of Pancakes negative value over replacement.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that tracks some of the bad chuckers in the NBA. But anyway, one of your proprietary stats is this playmaking score. Is that what was I understanding that podcast correctly?
Well, yeah. Well, I what I did so a lot of my work that I've done over the years is in studying passing and playmaking, and essentially going beyond the assist. I'm actually going to have a YouTube video this summer all about how you have the assist and what it is at face value, and then going beyond the assist. So there's really two major tracks of work that I've done in the last decade on this. Both involve manually studying games and then trying to take that information and add it as intelligence to some kind of box score stat model or something like that. The first is with creating shots for teammates. So in essence, how much can you tug the defense toward you as a threat and then set up a guy who, if you weren't there, wouldn't have been open because, his man wouldn't have left him in help situations. So that's one. The second is this concept of a passer rating, which is, football has passer rating and seems like basketball is more intuitive of a sport to actually have a number that measures how you pass. And this can be thought of like opportunities where guys are open, someone back cuts for a layup, moving the ball to a soft spot in the defense, your proficiency to do that versus the amount of times you will miss that or bypass that chance. And so you put those two things together, and really the spirit of the podcast was creating a model that takes those things, uses them and balances them, because how do I know what's more important if you create a bunch of shots or if you're always hitting open passes? I don't know. We can sit here philosophically and discuss it. But the spirit of the podcast was to say, if we asked a stat model to do this based on improving the scoreboard, based on how good someone is at making their team better, what would the playmaking component say?
All right. So all that, which I understood.
That was a lot.
No,
yeah.
I understood it. But as a Houston hater, I'm listening to your podcast.
Oh, that's right.
I'm like, oh yeah. He's created a new scoring system that spells out why James Harden isn't that good, or maybe isn't as good in the postseason. So what are some of those reasons that you think that his playmaking, score or ability, and even his normal basic stats, his shooting stats, they go down? Why is it that James Harden has trouble adapting what is elite offensive play in the regular season and not being as successful in the postseason?
Yeah, and just to be clear, I think the scoring stats go down in turn. I think the entire thing kind of suppresses a little bit, both how much you set up your teammates and how much you're actually efficiently scoring and attacking yourself. My hypothesis, and at some point if I have time, I'll try to go back and Zapruder film a bunch of videotape. But my hypothesis from watching over the years and just breaking down tape for other, sets of analyses is Harden is probably the greatest player in NBA history at tricking you or exploiting the rules. He is so crafty with all kinds of things from swing throughs to up fakes, even just his general attack, the way he's more comfortable rocking you to sleep before he makes an isolation move. Now he's added the step back, and with the step back has come some kind of foul drawing behavior as well. You put all those things in a blender, and you get a guy who, 36 points a game last year? Just an incredible regular season guy. But, and this is my bias as having a cognitive science background, when you see that, Keith, every night, when you don't see that every night, and you see it like once a month, what do you have like a walkthrough? The coaches will say something to you like, don't put your hand in the cookie jar, or don't bite on this up fake, or remember to shade this way. And it's hard for you to process that instantaneously 4 hours before the game, and you're going to get caught a couple times in the game on a Tuesday night in February. When you get into a playoff series, that may happen at the beginning of the series, but your mind is going to adapt game 2, game 3, game 4. Now I've seen all the tricks. I think in concurrence with that, the officials are also seeing the players respond differently. The officials are getting used to what they're seeing. And I think the totality is sort of a dampening of his overall brilliance, if you will. And to be clear, that doesn't mean he's not still great in the playoffs, right?
Right.
It's just looking at those regular season metrics, they come back to earth a little bit in the postseason, and I think there's good reason why.
Yeah, I think you said that he in your podcast that he loses that edge that is a big part of his game that takes him to those such elite statistical numbers. Last thing, wrapping up, since we spent all our time on the buffet.
It was a good use of time.
No, it really was. It was my plan. When we were in Las Vegas, when I met you in person in Las Vegas, it was during the Zion Williamson debut game, and I was kind of devil's advocate arguing. That was a hard thing to say.
Advocating? Can you devil's advocate?
I was deviling advocates against your. We were critiquing the 9 minutes Zion Williamson played, and you were kind of putting him down. I was kind of arguing for him. In totality, though, what is your impression of Zion Williamson, a player that the NBA has put on opening night and on Christmas Day? What are you expecting for rookie year Zion Williamson? And this can be based on the past or what you saw in Las Vegas.
First, I want to set the record straight here.
Yes.
I hear you tell this tale. It feels like it's growing taller with each regaling of it. So first, I don't think you were sitting with us. There was a brief conversation about how much Zion would play, and I had the over under at 12 minutes, and I said that might be it. That might be the only 12 minutes we get to see. He played 9 minutes, so I was kind of like expecting a short stint.
Yeah.
And when he went out, someone had asked us, what did you think of Zion's 9 minutes? And I kind of thought for a minute, and I said frustrating. That's how I described it. And I think, Keith, you have taken this and you have spun it into, and I'm not upset about this, but I mean, now I am like, Zion was terrible in Vegas and he's going to be a bust. And no, that's not how I feel. To put some color on those 9 minutes, I loved the idea that he played Mitchell Robinson, who's a good actual NBA defensive player. The things I was concerned about with Zion and still am going forward are, jump shot, perimeter face up, all the stuff that comes with creating with the basketball. And he doesn't need to do those things well to have a huge impact. He has an incredible upside as a defensive player, obviously, which I'm incredibly excited about. And then on offense, there's sort of a Charles Barkley-ish like physical domination around the basket, both as a lob threat. You saw it in that game. I mean, he just bullied Kevin Knox like he was a sixth grader. I think all of that stuff and the fact that he has a tendency to be really selective and strong with his shot distribution, his shot selection, I think that's going to leave him with a pretty high floor as a player. My comment about frustrating was I literally thought he was frustrated. I mean, that's why he ripped the ball from Knox.
Yeah.
He had 2 or 3 shots blocked. He had an air ball, and at a certain point, he just looked like he wanted to take it and ram it down the Knicks' throat, and couldn't always do that. He got his dunks in other situations. That was Keith's comeback, by the way. He said, "Ben, frustrating. He had 4 dunks."
Well, so I was counting the dunks, and you can besmirch it or paint it like Keith impressed by the dunks. He's not looking at the rest of the game. No, what I was saying was, I don't remember. At some point, I was counting the dunks. Like his very first run, it was like that. You said that was kind of frustrating. I'm like, in his first professional run, he just had 3 dunks. That's pretty. Yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad you're back on the hype train with everyone else.
I'm on the hype train now. Yeah, Zion for Rookie of the Year, I think. Is that bet even offered in Vegas? I mean,
it is. It was, I think it was 2 to 3. So you could still bet 100 to win 50. I actually, I have Brandon Clark at 300 to 1 that I did bet. So if hopefully Ben Taylor from Thinking Basketball is correct that Zion Williamson will be a bust, and I can collect on, my bet.
So before I get out of here, what are your long-term thoughts on Zion?
Well, so I don't know anything about. I never saw him play in college. I've never looked at tape of Zion Williamson. I know literally nothing other than the hype I've just gathered from other people being excited and then seeing that 9 minutes of him play. So I'm more like, okay. It wouldn't surprise me if he had like a Blake Griffin rookie year based on the 9 minutes I saw. Obviously, he had a shot blocked a ton. He didn't know what to do when he faced up to the basket. It looked like he just had to drive every time. So that's concerning. But I'm only speaking on what I've heard from others and sheer ignorance. I know nothing about Zion Williamson. I invite people on to tell me about him. So
I think ignorance is bliss.
It is.
I mean, you can't go wrong here. All right, awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ben. Tell people again where they can check out all your stuff.
Oh, man. Twitter, LG35, ELGE35. My website is backpicks.com. That's a lot of content over there for Patreon. You can subscribe and sign up on Patreon, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. That just helps me with the podcast, with YouTube content. You get all kinds of access to my proprietary stats that we talked about earlier when you do that. And that's it. Books, Thinking Basketball. It's available on Amazon, and I think that's everything.
That sounds great. Yeah, everyone out there, just go on YouTube, Google Thinking Basketball, and sit back and enjoy. The videos are awesome.
We
Ben,
didn't get to talk about Jaren Jackson. We're going to have to do that next time.
Yeah, we can talk about that more. Watch the
Jaren Jackson video. Enjoy that one.
I will. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate your time. Looking forward to having you back on.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate it.
Once again, thanks to Ben for coming on. Thinking Basketball, just Google it. If you want to spend a lot of time on YouTube watching incredibly well done and entertaining and informative basketball videos, you won't be disappointed. I pumped out 2 this morning. They're really easy to watch and they're really well made. So Thinking Basketball, check his stuff out. And if you want to support him, he's got a Patreon and all that stuff. We have a Patreon too. Support us at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you've ordered a gray Boban shirt, they're on the way. We had a little hold up with our printer getting the nice shirts we wanted. So they are probably will be mailed out end of the week if you haven't gotten if you're a large or XL gray Boban shirts. Those are coming out soon. If you still want to buy one, we can still make more. Email me at fastbreakbreak@gmail.com or slide in my Twitter mentions. If you're a Patreon supporter, $15. That's U.S. shipping included. If you're not, they are $20, and that includes U.S. shipping. All right, you can follow me on Twitter at fastbreakbreak. Like us on Facebook and on Instagram. All right, you guys are the best. Thanks for listening, and remember, breakfast is the most important thing.
Yeah, never apologize for being G&G. Fast break, man. You understand?
SeatGeek saves you time and saves you money. 2 of the more important commodities in our lives these days. They aggregate ticket selling sites together, so you don't have to go to 8 sites and then, I'm going to look at the 9th one now because I'm not quite sure. I was totally that way, of course. And then they also rank every ticket based on value. So you look at the section you want to sit in, find that big green dot, the darker green, the better. You'll start to experience just endorphins when you see that green dot and know that you're getting an awesome deal on the ticket. I used SeatGeek to go to a Bucks Wizards game, got awesome seats there for my fiance and me. So the way to get started with them, download the SeatGeek app and enter that familiar promo code
Fast Break.
by using that code to get $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. That's promo code
Fast Break.
for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Let them know that you came from us.
Fast Break. John is an asshole. Fast Break.